Hello, all you Magic the Gathering enthusiasts out there. Thank you for clicking on this video. It's a new year and I wanted to try something different, so kind of experimenting with this video. And we're going to be taking a look at the spoilers for Aetherdrift, the set that's coming out in February. So spoiler season started yesterday, and I wanted to take a look at some of the cards that have been released so far. Now, when I start evaluating these cards, note that I'm only talking about standard. I don't know too much about other formats, so I can't really speak on whether the card will be good or not in other formats. So keep that in mind when I talk about these cards. Anyway, Aetherdrift, race cars. Who's ready to look at some new cards? But first of all, let's take a look at a new mechanic from Aetherdrift. So Aetherdrift has a new mechanic called Start Your Engines, which goes hand in hand with the speed mechanic. The first time in a game you control a permanent that says start your engines, your speed becomes 1. And you can use this token to keep track of your speed. So I'm going off of the Magic's official website, and it says that when your speed becomes 1, this happens immediately, so no one can respond and try to remove the permanent before you pick up speed. Once your speed is 1 or greater, you can trigger an ability to increase your speed. That ability is whenever one or more opponents lose life during your turn, if your speed is less than 4, increase your speed by 1. This ability triggers only once each turn. This ability isn't tied to any permanent. For the rest of the game, it can be triggered as long as your speed is less than 4, no matter what permanent you control. And then once your speed is 4, you've achieved max speed, and your speed can't go any higher. So now that we got that out of the way, let's take a look at a creature as an example of how this works. So we have Vinywixit, and yes, I had to look up how to pronounce that. Vinywixit Verbose Host. It's a 2-mana, 1 in a blue, 0/4 legendary creature homunculus, and has Start Your Engine. So when this creature enters the battlefield, your speed becomes 1. You have no maximum hand size. And once you've reached max speed, if you would draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. So basically, as long as your speed is less than 4, Vinywixit does not have that last ability. But once you do, you draw an extra card anytime you draw a card. Now that we understand how Start Your Engines and speed works, let's look at some other cards with these abilities, like Zahur, Glory's Past, a 2-mana white and a black 3/2 legendary creature zombie cat warrior. Has Start Your Engines and sacrifice another creature, Surveil 1. Activate only once each turn. So it's a free sacrifice outlet, which is great, but that activate only once each turn honestly kind of kills it for me, but it's not bad. But once you have max speed, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So this ability is not a once a turn thing. So even though you can only sacrifice 1 creature to Zahur, if you have other ways to sacrifice creatures, you can make a lot of 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. And it doesn't have to be on your turn either. So for a 2-mana 3/2, I think this card has some potential. It'll most likely fit into like a aristocrat type of deck with Elas Il-Kor and other sacrifice synergistic creatures, though this deck could fit into a Cats deck. If you look at the next creature, Basari Tomorrow's Champion, which is a 1 white 2/1 legendary creature human knight, and though this doesn't have Start Your Engines, it has a couple other abilities like Exert and Cycling. So for 1 white, tap Exert Basari and create a 1/1 white cat creature token with lifelink. And then it has Cycling for 3, which is quite a lot of mana for a cycling ability, but when you cycle this card, cats you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Having that cycling ability on a legendary creature makes it so that when you draw a second or third copy of Basari, it's not really a dead draw. And as long as you have some sort of cat synergy in your deck, might be nice to have. Though I don't know, 3 mana might be a little bit too expensive. But talking about cycling, a card that synergizes with discarding cards is the Crypt Caller Chariot. It's a 4 mana, 3 and a black, 5/5 artifact vehicle with menace, and whenever you discard 1 or more cards, create that many untapped 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, and it has a crew cost of 2. So a 4 mana vehicle might be a little bit too expensive to see any sort of competitive play. I think this card would be fun to build a deck around. Basically, between cycling or any other discard ability, you can make an army of 2/2 black zombies. Just remember that the zombies come in tapped, so you can't use them as a surprise blocker. Now, a lot of the creatures that were spoiled with Start Your Engines and other speed abilities only care about having max speed, but there are some creatures that just care about what speed you're at, like Summit, the Driving Force. It's a 6 mana 4/5 in Naya colors, that's red, green, and white. It's a legendary human warrior cleric creature, and it has First Strike, Vigilance, and Haste. It has Start Your Engines, and other creatures you control get +X/+O, where X is your speed. Non-creature spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is your speed. So even if you don't have max speed, you still get the benefits from Samut when it enters. Though honestly, 6 mana is probably a little bit much for an aggressive creature like Samut, so probably won't see much competitive play, but who knows? Maybe the abilities is enough to see in a Joda deck or something like that. Either way, I think it'll be fun to build a deck around. Now, Aetherdrift has another new mechanic called Exhaust, and for example of that, let's look at Loot the Pathfinder. It's a 5 mana, 2 green, blue, and red, 2/4 legendary beast noble creature, and it has double strike, vigilance, and haste. So Exhaust is an activated ability that can only be activated once, and Loot has 3 exhaust abilities. For 1 green and tap, you can add 3 mana of any one color. For blue and a tap, draw 3 cards, and red and a tap, Loot deals 3 damage. So all of these abilities can only be used once, but one of the things you could always do is exile Loot using Agatha's Cauldron and give these abilities to any of your creatures with +1/+1 counters. And then you can activate these abilities as many times as you want. I don't know if that's going to make this card playable, but it's definitely something to think about because these abilities are pretty strong. Another example of how Exhaust is being used, we have the Rocketeer Boost Buggy. It's a 2 mana, red and a green, 3/2 artifact vehicle, and whenever this vehicle attacks, create a treasure token. And then has the Exhaust ability, pay 3, this vehicle becomes an artifact creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it has a crew cost of 1. So for 2 mana, you could have a 3/2 vehicle that helps you ramp up starting from turn 3, or you can just pay 3 mana and make this into a 4/3 creature. You don't have to worry about crewing ever again. It doesn't say until end of turn, so it's permanently a creature after you activate its Exhaust ability. Next, we have the pilot for the Rocketeer Boost Buggy, the Redshift Rocketeer Chief. It's also 2 mana, a red and a green, for a 2/3 legendary creature, Goblin Pilot. It has Vigilance, and you can tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is Redshift's power. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. And if you can pump up Redshift's power enough, you might be able to produce enough mana to pay for its other ability. Its Exhaust ability is 10, a red, and a green, so 12 mana total. Put any number of permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. That's a pretty powerful ability, and that's definitely a Timmy type of thing to do. And I really want to break this card and see what kind of shenanigans I can get into with that Exhaust ability. So next, I wanted to take a look at this vehicle called Guidelight Pathmaker. 6 mana, 4 a white and a blue for a 6/5 vehicle with Vigilance. And when this vehicle enters, you may search your library for an artifact card and reveal it. Put it onto the battlefield if its mana value is 2 or less. Otherwise, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Crew 2. So 6 mana is quite a lot, but in the Azorius colors, I think this fits into more of a somewhat control build, maybe a Simulacrum Synthesizer deck, and probably using this card as kind of a finisher. Now, as for what you should be grabbing with its Enter ability, you could always grab another copy of the Synthesizer, Or you could grab the Mendicant Core Guidelight. It's a 2 mana in the Azorius colors, star 3 legendary artifact creature robot. Mendicant Core's power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. It has start your engines, and when you achieve max speed, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1. If you do, copy it. So if you can get max speed with Mendicant Core down and you have the synthesizer on the battlefield, you can start doubling up on your artifacts that you play, triggering the synthesizer twice with 1 card. Now, I don't know if that's going to make the deck any better, but that was just the first thought I had when I saw these 2 cards together. Next, we have a couple of pirates that might be some good additions to the pirate deck. First, we have Captain Howler, Sea Scourge. It's 4 mana, 2 and a blue and a red for a 5/4 legendary shark pirate. It has Ward 2 and pay 2 life. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, draw a card. By the way, this is why I'm showing some of the alternate arts, because it's so freaking cool. Like a shark with all these tattoos and it's a pirate. It's awesome. It's awesome. Anyway, so I'm thinking this 4 mana creature will be your top end for your pirates, but anytime you discard a card, you pump up one of your creatures, and if they actually make contact with your opponent, you can draw a card. And that synergizes really well with our next creature, Fearless Swashbuckler. It's a 3 mana, 1 and a blue and a red for a 3/3 fish pirate. It has haste, and vehicles you control have haste. Whenever you attack, if a pirate and a vehicle attack this combat, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards. So if you can trigger this creature while you have a captain on the battlefield, the captain will give one of your creatures +4/+0, and if that creature damages your opponent, you draw a card. I don't know, I love the synergy there. Honestly, I don't know how well this will fit in with the current pirate deck, but I'm pretty sure you can change a couple things there, add a few vehicles, and maybe have a competitive deck there. Talking about adding vehicles, the next card, Thopter Fabricator, I think would fit perfectly into that deck. It's a 3 mana 4/4 vehicle with flying, and whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and it has crew 2. So a 4/4 flying body is not too bad, but the fact that anytime you draw your second card, which you should be able to do with those pirates, you create colorless Thopters is great. And they don't come in tapped, so you could use them as blockers as well. So this could fit into the Pirates deck, or it could fit into a more of a control deck where you're drawing a lot more cards. Either way, I think this is one of my favorite cards that's been spoiled so far and has a lot of different uses. But we'll see if it actually sees any competitive play. Next, we're going to take a look at a card that I like solely based on aesthetics. The Agonisaur Rex. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we're going to go with Agonisaur Rex. It's a 5 mana, 3 and a green 8/8 dinosaur with trample, which is always good. And then it has cycling for 3, 2 and a green. When you cycle this card, put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature or vehicle. It gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. So just having a 5 mana 8/8 with trample is pretty good. And then you're adding a cycling ability to it that pumps up one of your other creatures and gives it trample. Yeah, sign me up. I'm putting this into my dinosaur deck. It's definitely more of a Timmy card, I think, than a competitive card, but I could be wrong. We will see. And also, that alternate art, yeah, I love that like hot rod, crazy rat look that this art style is going for, which I could say the same for the next card, Bloodghast. This is a reprint. It's 2 mana, 2 black, and it's a 2/1 vampire spirit. This creature can't block. This creature has haste as long as an opponent has 10 or less life, and has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you may return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is a staple in any sort of like sacrifice or mill deck where you're trying to put creatures into the graveyard or sacrificing creatures, because you can always bring it back just by playing a land. It's crazy, and I love that it's back in standard. Next, I wanted to take a look at Sab Sunan Luxa Embodied. It's a 5 mana, 3 and the Simic colors, green and blue, for a 6/6 legendary creature god. It has reach, trample, indestructible, all really great keywords there. And Sab Sunan can't attack or block unless it has an even number of counters on it. 0 is even. At the beginning of your first main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on Sab Sunan. Then if it has an odd number of counters on it, draw 2 cards. So that's a very interesting condition to meet to be able to attack or block. So the way this is designed is the turn it comes in, it has no counters, so it is a possible blocker. And then the next turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, draw 2 cards, and you can't really attack in. And then the turn after that, you don't draw 2 cards, but now you can attack in, so on and so forth, every other turn. But you probably want to put this in a deck that has +1/+1 counter synergy. So basically, you play this card, next turn it gets the +1/+1 counter, you draw 2 cards, and then during your first main phase, add another counter on it. Now you can attack in. And then next turn, you draw 2 cards, put another counter on it, it can attack in, so on and so forth. So you'll be drawing 2 cards and attacking in every turn. At least that's the idea I had with this. Just feels like a lot of value here. Unless it gets removed quickly, it's just going to snowball real quick, I think. But we'll see if this sees any competitive play. And then finally, I wanted to take a look at the big card from this set, the Aether Spark. So the Aether Spark is a colorless 4 mana legendary planeswalker equipment. So I think this is the first time a planeswalker has been an equipment as well. It comes in with 4 loyalty counters, and as long as the Aether Spark is attached to a creature, the Aether Spark can't be attacked and has whenever equipped creature deals combat damage during your turn, put that many loyalty counters on the Aether Spark. Then the +1 is attach the Aether Spark to up to 1 target creature you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. The -5 is draw 2 cards, and -10, add 10 mana of any one color. So I feel like there's a lot of crazy shenanigans that you can do with this planeswalker. I haven't really seen a planeswalker like this, so I'm really curious how this is going to work out. And since it's colorless, you can really put it in just about any deck. So as long as it has a creature, if you're running a deck with no creatures, I don't know if it's worth playing this card. But either way, I'm really excited to see what people come up with this card and see if this card actually sees any sort of competitive play. And if not, at least there'll be some really fun brews with this card. So that concludes the spoilers for this video. I know a lot more cards were spoiled during this time, but I just wanted to take a look at the cards that I found interesting or thought maybe would be pretty strong. If there's some cards that I missed that I should have talked about, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll put it in the next video. Now, whether there'll be a next video or not depends on how well this video does. So if you like this content, please give it a like and leave a comment below. Also, I plan on releasing other videos that's not just Magic the Gathering Arena, because I want to make this channel a little bit more about like Magic the Gathering in general, not just gameplay. So if you're interested in that type of content, please consider supporting me and liking those videos, subscribing to my channel, and check out my Patreon. I release some extra videos there, and you can get early access to my YouTube videos there as well. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, consider joining the Patreon. It's still pretty new, so it's kind of still under construction, so keep that in mind. And with that being said, if you stuck around this long, thank you very much for your support. I appreciate it a lot. And remember, have fun playing Magic, and I'll see you in the next video.